Most Americans who retire abroad never return with regrets about leaving. They return regretting where they chose to go. A growing number of Americans who spent years dreaming about Mexico are now quietly packing their bags for somewhere entirely different. Most of them never seriously considered this new destination until a friend mentioned it, or until they did the math. What they found on the other side of that calculation surprised them deeply, and it might make you reconsider retiring abroad entirely. For decades, Mexico has been the default answer whenever Americans start seriously thinking about life after work. It is close to home, familiar, the food is remarkable, and the cost of living beats anything found in the continental United States. That reputation is not wrong, but being affordable compared to the United States is very different from being affordable compared to your actual options. When a retired teacher named David moved to Dumaguete in the Philippines 3 years ago, something meaningful changed for him. For the first time in his adult life, David was living comfortably without watching the calendar and dreading the end of the month. Not because his pension had grown, but because the place he chose made that pension stretch in ways he had not expected. The numbers tell a clear story. A one-bedroom apartment in Puerto Vallarta, or Guadalajara, typically runs between $800 and $1,200 per month. In Cebu or Dumaguete, a comparable apartment with a comparable quality of life costs somewhere between $400 and $700 per month. Food, transportation, and daily entertainment follow the same pattern, with overall Philippine costs running roughly 30 to 40% lower. For someone living on a fixed retirement income, a difference of $300 a month is not a rounding error. Over 20 years, that difference compounds into something that fundamentally changes what retirement actually feels like every single day. Then, there is the language question, which most people do not think about until they are already living abroad. In Mexico, Spanish is not optional if you want to truly live there, rather than exist inside a sealed expat community. Scheduling a doctor's visit, sorting out a lease, or understanding a neighbor's concern, everything funnels back to Spanish eventually. Learning a new language at 65 is genuinely possible, but it is genuinely hard. The gap between managing and truly belonging is wide. The Philippines changes that equation entirely. English is the country's second official language, not just as a legal formality, but as a living reality. Doctors speak English. Bank tellers speak English. Market vendors speak English. You step off the plane and can understand the world around you. A friend who had spent years in Mexico once described the loneliest part of that experience in a memorable and striking way. The loneliest part was not being far from home, but sitting in a room full of people with no way to reach them. In the Philippines, he said, he never felt that way. The connection was immediate, warm, and genuinely effortless from the very first day. Safety is another topic that deserves a direct look, rather than vague reassurances or headlines designed to frighten without informing. Both Mexico and the Philippines have areas with real risks, and pretending otherwise helps no one planning a retirement move. Mexico has regions. The U.S. State Department places under Level 3 and Level 4 advisories, primarily tied to organized criminal activity. Expats in Guadalajara or Puerto Vallarta often report positive day-to-day experiences, but the underlying environment cannot be wished away entirely. The Philippines has its own trouble spots, mostly concentrated in parts of southern Mindanao that most retirees will never visit. Popular retirement destinations like Cebu, Dumaguete, and Davao are widely considered stable and manageable through ordinary daily awareness. The right approach is not to choose a country based on fear or headlines, but to research the specific city where you plan to live. Healthcare is often the factor that makes or breaks a retirement abroad decision, especially for retirees in their 60s and 70s. The private medical system in major Philippine cities is among the strongest and most developed in all of Southeast Asia. Hospitals like Chonghua in Cebu and St. Luke's Medical Center in Manila offer modern facilities and internationally trained physicians. Care at these hospitals is conducted entirely in English, with physicians trained in the United States or Europe returning home. The cost of many procedures runs at roughly 20% of what the same treatment would cost in the United States. Mexico's private healthcare system is also strong in large cities, and costs are well below American prices, which matters greatly. But the language factor follows patients right into the exam room in Mexico, adding stress when patients are already unwell. One major advantage the Philippines holds that rarely comes up in comparison articles is the quality of its nursing workforce. Filipino nurses are trained to international standards, and many have worked in the United States or the United Kingdom before returning home. The level of patient care and the warmth of the staff are things American expats consistently mention when recounting medical experiences there. Beyond the practical metrics, there is something harder to measure, but impossible to ignore when choosing where to spend your retirement. Culture shapes whether you feel like a guest or whether you feel like you actually and genuinely belong to a place. Mexico has a rich and proud culture, and its people are genuinely welcoming to foreigners who come with openness and respect. But the historical relationship between Mexico and the United States is complicated, and that complexity surfaces in real and unexpected ways. The rapid influx of American expats has driven housing costs sharply upward in places like Oaxaca and Mexico City in recent years. This creates friction with local communities that some Americans find genuinely uncomfortable when they realize they are part of the problem. The Philippines carries a different kind of shared history with the United States, more than a century of deep mutual connection. That connection runs through education, language, law, music, and popular culture in ways that feel entirely organic today. Filipinos grew up with Hollywood films and English-language media, and cultural references Americans carry naturally are recognized and understood. The warmth retirees describe encountering in the Philippines tends to feel organic rather than transactional, and that distinction matters deeply. When you are deciding where to spend the rest of your life, that feeling of organic belonging matters more than people initially realize. On the administrative side, the Philippines offers a retirement visa program called the Special Resident Retirees Visa, or SRV. The SRRV stands out for its remarkable clarity and accessibility when compared to equivalent programs in other popular retirement destinations. Applicants over 50 with a stable pension can qualify with a required time deposit as low as $10,000, a genuinely low bar. The visa allows long-term residency without annual renewal requirements, a significant advantage over other retirement visa structures abroad. It also comes with practical benefits, including exemptions on certain import duties for personal belongings brought into the country. Mexico does not have an equivalent dedicated retirement visa. Most American expats use the Resident Temporal Program instead. That program requires proof of monthly income, around $2,700, or the equivalent in assets, and must be renewed periodically by applicants. The renewal process can vary significantly depending on the region of Mexico, adding unpredictability to an otherwise settled retirement life. From a paperwork standpoint, the Philippine system is more transparent, more stable, and more explicitly designed for foreign retirees. That is not an accident. The Philippine government has been actively courting international retirees for decades with deliberate policy. The infrastructure built around that long-term effort shows in ways that make daily retirement life meaningfully easier and less stressful. None of this is an argument that Mexico is a bad place to retire. For many Americans, it remains entirely the right choice. There is a reason Mexico became the default answer for American retirement abroad in the first place, and that reason remains valid. But defaults deserve to be questioned, especially when the decision being made will shape the next 20 or 30 years of your life. The Philippines is not a compromise or a second option. It is a country with its own distinct beauty, culture, and welcoming pace. A growing community of Americans made the longer flight and found something they were not expecting waiting for them on the other side. They found not just a relocation, but a genuine sense of arrival, the feeling of being somewhere they were truly glad to be.